Hello everyone. In this video we will continue to convert our code to TypeScript and focus on event handling. Now if you remember from the previous video, we have some message handling, and here we have our handler, and the type of this event we had set to any temporarily. Now let's go ahead and find the corresponding event type so we can use that, and let's start from the beginning. So we first get our message model from the messaging service. So let's first copy that and search for it in the API reference. And here is messaging, and we are getting the message model. Let's see, right here. And then we are creating a list binding. So let's do that. And if we search for get message model right here, it's returning this, and we are using the method bind list. So let's search for it. We see that it's being borrowed from this class model. So let's go here, and we see that it's returning SAP UI model list binding, and that is exactly why we used SAP UI model list binding here as the type of our binding. Now let's go back to our event handler, and here we already set the type as list binding to our source type, and now we need to find the event type for the change event. Now if we go back to the API reference, this is the bind list method is returning this list binding, and we are using the change event, remember, but we can see there is no change event, but it's borrowed from this class instead. So let's go there, and this means we need to import the type from this class and not from list binding. Now let's go back to our code and import the event type. So we will import something, it will be a named import, and from this with the slashes, of course. And what we will import is, let's see what we have available with control space, and change event is the one we are looking for. So let's import that and copy and paste here instead of any. And actually we don't get many advantages by specifying the event type here, because we still need to say to TypeScript that this event source is a list binding, because if we remove this, we will again get the same error that get context does not exist on type binding. And that's because if we again go back to the API, we see that this change events, let's see, source is of type just base event provider. And if we go there and we have subclasses, that means our source could be any of these. But we do know that our source will be a model binding, and more specifically, it will be a list binding. And that's why we have to tell TypeScript that our source is a list binding. So there is not much to gain here by using the correct event type, but we will see how it will be useful shortly. Now let's continue and convert our, let's see, details controller actually, and again as usual, first let's rename it to TS. And now again we begin with our imports. So let's copy everything here and import. Actually first let's paste everything and select everything, import something from here, remove the commas, and let's copy the names of what we want to import. We paste, and again as usual we say export default class, and let's name it details class, details controller, sorry, which extends controller. And let's see what we have. We have the formatter, but I will leave this to the next video. And let's copy the onInit function first. Let's paste, remove the function keyword. We can again set the return type to void, but I will skip that for now. And here we already have some error and it says object is possibly undefined. So it's saying that this part right here, get router for this, could be undefined, and we have to handle this because otherwise this part will throw an error. And for that we will use a very simple solution which is named optional chaining. So we will put a question mark before accessing a method or a property of any variable, in this case UI component. And then we also have to do the same for getRoute of getRouter4, whatever that returns, and then also before attaching the pattern matched event. And by doing this, we are simply making sure that this part, even if this or this or this returns undefined or null, it's not going to throw any error. I'm sure you already know about optional chaining, but let's see it quickly, how that works. I will open the developer console here. And let's define a variable var or even const x equals, and it will be an object. Let's say name is John and age 26, for example. Now if we try to access x.name, we have John, also x.age, it's 26. But if I try to do something like let's see, address, which doesn't exist, and then street, now I get an error. But using the optional chaining, if I say x dot address question mark dot street, it will just return undefined, so we will not get any runtime errors. In this case, we already know x is not undefined, it cannot be, so we can also say directly x.address.street and only check if address exists. And again, there are no errors. Okay, now let's go back. And this is missing this method, so let's copy that one. Let's see. It's right here. I will just copy that and paste it here. Remove the function keyword. And now we have again another event, but first let's convert this to const. We don't want to use var anywhere. And let's find where we can get the actual event type for object matched. So if we check, it's coming from attach pattern matched, and it's coming from this details route. But first we are accessing our router, and first we need to find the type of that. And if we check our manifest JSON and the router config, we can see that our router class is this one. And let's go to the API ref again, search for this. And again, we are getting a route, one of our routes named details. So we should be looking for get route. Here it's again borrowed from a superclass. And then we are attaching an event handler, which is named attach pattern matched. Let's copy it. First, of course, we have to go to the route, the return type. And then here we are attaching the event to the route itself. And if we check this event, we can see it's coming from this class right here. So let's copy this one. And this is where we need to import our event type. And here let's say import again something from this. And let's see what do we have available. But first we have to change these with slashes, of course. And now let's see. And the event we are attaching again pattern matched, so we are looking for that. Route, let's see, pattern matched event. So this is the one we are looking for. And let's use this as our event type. And now we will start to see some positives about using the correct event type. because here let's first see what error we have. It says again object is possibly undefined, so we can just add, let's see, optional chaining, and user ID does not exist on type object because this will return just an object. Let's actually see how it works. If I say again const here something equals, and I say event dot get parameter, and I will already see some suggestions here because I can get arguments, config, name, etc. These are the arguments that I can get from the event, and we get this because we use this event type, and this event has, let's see, exactly these parameters. So this is very useful that we get some auto completion here, and we cannot get some wrong or made up parameter here because Typescript will complain. Now let's remove this, and get parameter method here again is returning, let's see, an object, and we don't know what exists on this object, but we do know in our case that there will be a user ID parameter, because if we check manifest.json, we can see that this exists and it's mandatory. So to get around this, we actually need to use the type any here, and we can say this part, and in this case we don't need optional chaining. We can say get this part as any, so it can be of any shape, and again we have to put these in between parentheses. And now since we used any, we basically say it can include anything and our user ID as well. And now here we should again have the same possibly undefined error, and that's again easy. We will just put in a question mark and use optional chaining, and there's that. Now let's save. Let's also comment out the formatter for now. Like I said, we will cover that in the next video anyway. And let's see what we have next. We have on press edit. Let's first copy this one. And remove this function. This is again very similar. Let's make this a const and this as any. Again, we are casting. And this could be undefined, so we put a question mark here. The rest looks good. And by the way, this method will only be used from this controller class, so we might as well set this as private. And let's see what we have. Then we have on press suspend, and that should be it, I think. Yes, so I will just remove everything here and paste the last event handler. And again, we remove that, replace all vars with consts, and we need to use optional chainings here and here. And here, let's see what we have. Our model is possibly undefined. Okay, again, optional chaining. And then we have an error about our context, because it says our context could be of type context, null, or undefined, which is not assignable to context or undefined. So we again have to say to Typescript that we do know our context will not be undefined and it will be of type context. So let's use the typecasting again, say as context, and we should import it from SAP UI model context. And let's see next error. Our action is possibly undefined. Let's put a question mark here. And this error here says property execute does not exist on type context binding. Now there are also multiple ways to get around this. And first one would be using again typecasting for oAction. And if we check our oAction, it's just using this bind context and the return value from that. And our O model, we know that it's an OData v4 model. And if we check the OData v4 model, OData model, and again we are using, let's see, bind context. So let's search for this. And let's check what it returns. And it's returning this OData context binding from v4 namespace. Now let's navigate to there and see the methods. We can see the execute actually exists there. So what we can do is let's copy this part, go back to our code, and use this as type of our action. So let's again import something from here. And let's OData context binding, let's copy this using typecasting, so as OData context binding. And now we have a different error which just says execute is obsolete and we should use invoke instead. So let's quickly change this to invoke. And now let's convert this function to an arrow function quickly. And we don't need this part anymore. Now we have another error for refresh, that it does not exist on type context. Let's check our context type, and you see we are importing it from SAP UI model context, but we do know that it will be an OData v4 context. So let's also change that and search for it. OData v4 context, and let's copy this and change this one. And now that error is gone. We don't have any errors, but going back to our action type, like I said, there are more than one way to get around this, and we use typecasting to set the type as this for our action. But what we can also do is, which is an alternative and a better way in my opinion, we can set the type of our model, and then it can be the type of action can be inferred from our model automatically by Typescript. So I think it's better to set the types as soon as we can. In this case, setting the type of the model is earlier than setting the type of our action. And let's remove this typecasting and also the import for it. And instead, let's import OData v4. Here is OData model, and copy this. And we will import something from here. And let's name it OData model. Actually, let's name it OData v4 model, so it's more descriptive. And now we can say get our model as OData v4 model. And now, even if we don't use typecasting for our action, it knows that it's OData context binding because it's coming from our model, which has this type. So we don't have to set explicitly the type for our action here. Now let's save and also convert our home controller.js. We quickly rename it to TS, open it. And this should also be a short one. We again start with copying our imports. We paste and select all the lines and import something from here. Let's copy the names and paste. And as usual, we export default class. Let's name this home controller, only makes sense, which extends the controller. And again, formatter will be taken care of on the next video. So let me comment this out. And we have on init, which is empty, so I will skip that. then we have onSelect filter, so let's copy this one. And paste. Now let's see, let's remove this function. And again, we need to type for our event. And it's coming from, let's copy this event handler name and let's open our home view, search for it. We can see it's coming from icon tab bar. So again, we go to the API ref, search for this control, and then the event should be there. It should be the select event. Let's see exactly, which means we can import the event type from here. Let's go back to our controller and say import something from here. And we are looking for the change event type. So let's see, select event, not the change event. So let's copy this select event type, set it. And we don't get any error for this, for example, because Typescript knows that this parameter already exists in this type of event. And let's change our vars to consts. Now we need to use optional chaining here. And that's okay, because we know this will never be undefined. We do have a control with this ID. And now let's see, our table binding is possibly undefined. Again, optional chaining will solve that. But this part right here, filter, does not exist on type binding. Now, if we see why that happens, let's see, here we are getting the table binding and we are accessing our table and calling get binding items. Now let's see what that returns. So our control is of type mTable. Let's check, and we are using get binding. Now let's search for get binding. And get binding returns sub UI model binding, subclasses. Could be one of these, and we already know that ours is a list binding. And let's also import this. Go here, import something from here, and that something will be, let's name it list binding. And now we can say that our table binding will always be a list binding. So let's use typecasting. Now this is gone. We have another error here, cannot find name operator, because when copying I named it as filter operator. Let's rename it to operator, and that is also gone. Let's see what else we have. We have onPress event handler. Let's copy this one. After here, remove this, and this time event will be, let's see, onPress. It should be a column list item. So I just missed it. Here, yes, it's coming from column list item. So let's find it. Column list item events. And here is the press event, and we see it's coming from this right here, from the list item base. So that's where we need to import it from. Import something from here with slashes. And we are looking for the press event type right here. We copy this, set it as our type. And let's see, this should be a const. Here, let's see what we have. Is possibly null or undefined, and optional chaining should fix that. And next, let's see what we have. onPress create. This should be very straightforward. we don't have the event object, so we don't need the type anyway. Let's see what's next. We have onPress delete. Paste here, remove this. And let's see where this is coming from. And it's coming from the table control, not the column list item. And let's find that again, table events. And we see the delete event is borrowed from sub list base. So let's copy this part. Go back, import the type, import something from here. And that something is, we are looking for delete event, and it's right here. Let's copy this, set it as our event type. This should be optional. This one as well. Let's see, what does it say about the item? Probably also possibly undefined, so optional chaining again. And let's see, delete does not exist on type of context. First, let's make these consts. And then let's take care of this. We will need to use typecasting here. Let's put these in between parentheses. And the binding context of our item again will be an OData v4 binding, because it's using our default model here. And our model is an OData v4 model in this case. Now if we check the context for that, OData.v4, and let's find context right here. Let's import it from here, or we can use the auto import, maybe, let's see, as context. And let's see the suggestions. Exactly, so we have OData v4 context, and delete does exist on it, so the error is gone. Let's see what else we have here. Possibly undefined is okay. Submit batch does not exist on type of model, so we have to set our model type as well as OData model, but we again need to import it from OData v4, and we are done. Let's see what else we have after delete. We have this right here. Let's copy this one, paste, remove the function keyword, and here we have something special using the fragments, but we will take care of this part in the next video as well, and we will convert this to an async function. So I will leave it as is for now and just comment it out. And let's continue. Now we have these two little functions. Let's copy, paste, little formatting, remove the function keyword, remove this comma, and again this part will cause some issues because of the dialog, so let's just leave those like this and also comment them out and take care of them in the next video. Now let's get rid of all this old code, save, and I think I had stopped the server. Let me restart it. npm run watch. Now this error is coming from the formatter because, like I said, we will take care of the formatters in the next video. We can simply ignore this for now, and the rest should be working as usual except for the formatting. And that would be all for this video, and see you in the next one.